to welcome everybody to the 2021 Eastern Central U.S. Buddhist Action to Feed the Hungry. We are delighted to have you all join us today. We will hear from a number of Dharma leaders and see some videos and presentations of projects that we support as well. Bhikkhu Bodhi will end the session by sharing the merits at about 2 p.m. or whatever, the New York time. And we hope you will listen with open hearts to all the presentations and respond with generosity as best you are able. And for a few housekeeping issues, you are all muted when you come in because it is a large event. If you have any questions, please use the chat room and we will attempt to answer your questions. First, I would like to introduce the participating organizations for today's events. The Buddhist Council of New York, represented by Reverend Duyun Park, and please forgive me if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly. Buddhist Insights, represented by Aya Soma and Bhante Sudaso. The Deep South Dharma Group, represented by Christy Bates. Dharma Spring Meditation, represented by Sister Papnan, aka Kathy Hill. Heart Circle Sangha, represented by Venerable Joan Hubbardich. Jamyang Foundation, represented by Karma Lakshmi Tsomo. Myokenji Temple, the Nichiren Buddhist Sangha of Texas, represented by Venerable Myoke Shonen. Union Theological Seminary, represented by Kosen Greg Snyder. Vajra Dakini Nunnery, represented by Venerable Kenmo Droma. The Zen Studies Society, represented by Jufu Devjani. Thank you so much for coming. These are some of new friends as well as participants in previous events, and we are grateful for all your support. Now we're going to hear from the founder and chair of Buddhist Global Relief, Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi.
Okay, so thank you again, everybody, for joining us. Thank you to the speakers for accepting my invitation to speak today. And thank you to all of the participants and all of the supporting organizations. Yeah, back starting in the year 2010, we came up with the idea of launching a fundraising event by holding a walk to feed the hungry. So we started in New Jersey with one walk, which brought together about 50 people from the vicinity, from New York City, New Jersey. But then the following year, 2011, some Buddhist friends in Michigan, around Ann Arbor, Michigan, and in California decided to also hold walks to feed the hungry around the same time, October, early November. And so in that way, in 2011, our walk to feed the hungry had spread from the New York, New Jersey area to 3 places in the United States. Over the course of the following year, more and more places and Buddhist organizations in the US picked up the idea of supporting Buddhist Global Relief with a walk to feed the hungry. And in that way, we were holding 10 walks to feed the hungry around the country. And some of our partner organizations, particularly in Asia, in Cambodia and India, and my friend Bhante Buddharakkhita in Uganda, in Africa, decided to hold parallel walks. We call these parallel walks with our walk in the United States. And so in that way, the walk to feed the hungry became something of an international or global phenomenon, which is quite appropriate for a Buddhist global relief. So the walks continued all the ways through 2019. But then at the beginning of 2020, the dark shadow of COVID spread across the United States and forced us into lockdown or semi-lockdown mode. And so we could not have an actual walk to feed the hungry. And so we were puzzled, what are we going to do? since this is our has been our main fundraising event. And so we decided to hold online actions to feed the hungry. And last year, we had about 5 online actions to feed the hungry, which was too demanding for our staff, since almost every weekend they had to coordinate and launch the online event to feed the hungry. And so we decided this year to have just 2 online events. We had one on October 2nd, which was intended to bring together the Western and Mountain states. And now this time, October 30th, we're holding the second event, which is bringing together the Eastern, Northeastern, Southern, and hopefully the Midwestern states. And so this is some of the background to how this walk to feed the hungry, or how the walk to feed the hungry started, and how we transformed from a walk into online events. And we want to regard these events not merely as a fundraising activity, but also a way to let people around the world, especially in this country, know about the extent of global hunger, to arouse the feeling of solidarity with the poor people in this country and around the world, to arouse the heart of compassion, to motivate people to express concern for those who struggle just to get by from day to day with minimal amounts of food, and also to collaboratively take action to help those who face the plight of hunger. And so with this, I want now to introduce our executive director, who has taken over the position of executive director in 2009. She is originally from Vietnam. She came to the US as a university student in 1973, almost the same time that I went to Sri Lanka to become ordained as a Buddhist monk. And she worked for many years as a highly qualified, I think, software engineer in the telecommunications industry. But then after Buddhist Global Relief started, she decided to retire from her professional work and then take over the position of executive director of Buddhist Global Relief. And I think it's been largely through her impetus, her dedication, her great skill that BGR has able to grow from just a small organization with just a few dedicated volunteers to, I would say, almost now quite a significant relief organization, partnering with some of the major global relief organizations like Helen Keller, CARE, Oxfam America, and others, and able to stand our own ground alongside of them. And so please, Kim, will you please take over and give your presentation?
Thank you, Bhante. I would like to thank Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi for the very, very kind introduction, and all the Venerables and Dharma teachers and Dharma friends for joining us today. I'm very honored to be here to share the work of Buddhist Global Relief for the past 12 years. So at this point, let me bring up the presentation. And I hope you see my screen.
We see the screen, but so far nothing on it.
There
Okay.
we go.
Okay, let me start the slideshow, Bhante. Okay, so can you see it now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you so much. First, I would like to start with BGR history. In the fall of 2007, Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi wrote an essay for the Dharma magazine in which he challenged Buddhists to face the immense suffering in the world. Several of his students felt inspired by the message and discussed the formation of a nonprofit organization. And from the discussions that followed, afterwards, Buddhist Global Relief was born in May of 2008 to give a helping hand to those afflicted by hunger and malnutrition. In his essay, Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi said that a special challenge facing Buddhism in our age is to be a voice of conscience for those victims of social, economic, and political injustice who cannot stand up and speak for themselves. According to the World Food Program, hunger is the #1 health risk impacting almost 900 million people in the world. The Buddha in the Anguttara Nikaya praises the value of giving. In giving food, one gives 5 things to the recipients. One gives life, beauty, happiness, strength, and mental clarity. To address the problem of hunger, the mission of Buddhist Global Relief is fourfold. We provide food assistance to those afflicted by hunger and malnutrition. But to combat poverty and hunger is not enough just to provide food aid. We also need to tackle the roots of poverty, which is the lack of education. So in parallel with food aid, we also promote the education of children, especially girls, which is essential in the fight against poverty. We give women livelihood skills so they can put more food on the table for the family. And we also train small-scale farmers in sustainable food production. BGR is still a smaller organization with limited resources, so we work in partnership with relief organizations already working on the ground in the countries we serve. A few of our partners are large NGOs, but most are small, grassroots, and locally based organizations. To give you an idea of how we implement our mission, I would like to share a few projects in each area of our mission. In Jacmel, Haiti, we partner with the Art Creation Foundation for Children to provide hot meals to 50 children in the program. Many of these children went to school hungry for not having a meal the night before. Our partner wrote to us that the only food these children are getting consistently is from the foundation, and the funds provided by BGR is why these children eat regularly. In Tamil Nadu, India, we partner with Lotus Outreach to provide morning porridge and midday meals to 175 school children. And as a result of our support, the students eat regularly, are healthy, and are learning in school. In Burma, the ethnic minorities endure hardship because of the army's oppression. And the Burma Humanitarian Mission, our partner, trained medics from the ethnic minorities population to provide mobile medical care to people living in villages and camps in the conflict zone. So BGR grant support 54 children of these medics by providing them with educational scholarships as well as food aid for the school year. In Cambodia, only 2% of women receive a college degree. So for the past 10 years, BGR has provided secondary education as well as university scholarship to young women. In 2020, all the 16 students BGR supported have graduated from college. And this year, due to the success of the program, we funded a second batch of 12 young women to attend college. These young women are truly change makers in their communities in the sense that they are the first in the families to graduate high school, college, and have careers that break the cycle of poverty for generations to come. In the area of women's livelihood, our partner Building Bridges works with poor families in Punjab, India, to improve the condition of women, many of whom are widowed. With the support of Buddhist Global Relief, BBI has established vocational training centers and has trained 125 women in embroidery and stitching so they can earn an income. And in Cameroon, we partner with CC Reed to help widows and single mothers with vocational training, skills that allow them to enter the works immediately, such as sewing and beautician skills. Our partner wrote to us that these women are knocking at the door just to be trained. So in 2019, we funded the expansion of the vocational training center so more women can be trained. And lastly, in the area of sustainable food production, our project with BGR in Kenya trains women farmers in the cultivation of short duration cash crops to increase their income level. And right here in the US, we partner with Keep Growing Detroit to promote access to healthy foods by teaching Detroit residents skills in gardening using empty lots in the city. And this is the map of our projects. As you can see, our projects have a global range, starting with the big Buddhist countries of Southeast Asia and extending to India, Sri Lanka, countries of Africa, South and Central America, Haiti, where Buddhism is almost non-existent, and right here in the US. So these are a few of our projects. For a complete description of our programs, please visit our website at buddhistglobalrelief.org. As Venbo Bhikkhu Bodhi has mentioned at the beginning of the program, for the past 10 years, our main fundraising activity has been the annual Walk to Feed the Hungry, typically held in the fall. In 2010, we started with a single walk in West Orange, New Jersey, and the number of walks has increased over the years. Until 2019, we had 10 to 12 walks around the US. And these walks have been very, very popular to bring together Buddhists of all traditions to help with those in needs. And this is the Solidarity Walk that Bhante was referring to previously, organized by our partner, the Bodhicitta Foundation. These children are beneficiaries of the Community Center program funded by Buddhist Global Relief, and they walk in the streets of Nagpur, India to support our mission. And this is another beneficiary walk in Entebbe, Uganda, by our partner, the Uganda Buddhist Center. And again, these children are beneficiaries of the Peace School program funded by BGR, and they walk in support of our work. And in 2020, in response to the COVID pandemic, Buddhist Global Relief launched our Buddhist Action to Feed the Hungry program. And these are basically online events which offer opportunities for us to connect with our Dharma community around the world while raising funds to assist those in need. And now I would like to share the financial aspect of our work. This chart shows our contributed support for the past 12 years. As you can see, BGR has maintained our steady growth since our inception in 2008. In 2009, our revenue was approximately 70,000, and this year, our revenue exceeded the $1 million mark. The spike that you see in 2019 was due to the accounting of a very large 3-year pledge that need to be recognized in a single year. And this is the chart of our supported programs, which follows very closely the trajectory of our contributed support. The bars, the brown bars represent the funding amount, and the line represent the number of projects funded. So in 2009, we started with 3 small pilot projects in Sri Lanka, Myanmar, and Vietnam for the funding level of around 15,000. And this past spring, Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi and the board have approved over 50 projects with the funding level of over $1 million. And this is the revenue by source pie chart, which shows that most of our donations come from individuals, around 96%, which include event receipts as well as donated securities, and only 4% from foundation and trust. At Buddhist Global Relief, we are deeply committed to serve and uplift those most in need. So we strive to use our resources as efficiently as possible. As you can see from the chart, 93% of each dollar goes directly to programs, with 5% allocated to fundraising and 2% to administration. As you can see on the left-hand side, our 2021 financials are under audit and should be completed in a few months. And also a piece of good news, in August of this year, Buddhist Global Relief, we received the good news that Buddhist Global Relief has earned the Gold Seal of Transparency from Guy Star for the quality of our work. At Buddhist Global Relief, we do not proselytize, rather we seek to work in harmony with people of all faiths to alleviate poverty. And these are the core values that we uphold at Buddhist Global Relief. One of the important aspects of our work is our close collaboration with our partners to understand the need of those we serve. We are also accountable to our donors for the funds entrusted to us with utmost care. The values that guide us at Buddhist Global Relief are rooted in the 4 divine abodes of loving kindness, compassion, altruistic joy, and equanimity. And at a personal level, I would like to share that it has been such an amazing and transformative journey for the past 12 years under the most excellent guidance of our teacher, Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi. Each day of work for Buddhist Global Relief is the day of practice of compassion for those in need, and also a day of inner work to sustain our outer work. The vows of Samantabhadra have touched us deeply in our work for BGR, as we aspire to be a good doctor for those who suffer from illness, a guide for those who have gone astray, a lamp for those who dwell in darkness, and a source of treasure for those in poverty and need. As you can see from the presentation, none of this work would have been possible without our community of donors, volunteers, and Dharma friends. We are so deeply grateful for your contributions, and we hope you continue to support the mission of Buddhist Global Relief as we grow into the future. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you at future events of Buddhist Global Relief. Thank you so much.
Thank you, dear Kim. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank
Love
you.
Thank you so much, Kim, for that really inspiring overview of the history and work of BGR.
Thank you.
It's always wonderful to hear, and I've heard the story so many times, but it is a beautiful story. So next we are going to hear from Venerable Khenmo Drolma. She is the abbess of Vajradakini Nunnery in Falmouth, Maine. Venerable Drolma has studied with the foremost Tibetan Buddhist teachers of our time, including His Holiness the Dalai Lama His Holiness Drikung Kyabgon Chetsang Rinpoche, the head of the Drikung Kagyu lineage, and Ani Pema Chodron. In 2002, she took full ordination as a Buddhist nun in Taiwan. And in 2004, she was installed as Kenmo, or abbot, in the Drikung lineage, becoming the first woman and first Westerner in her lineage to fully hold this responsibility. Her current responsibilities include the Tibetan Himalayan Nuns Leadership Program, and she chairs the International Committee for the 2020 Shavasti Rains Retreat. Venerable Kenmo Dronway, it's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Oh, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be a part of this event. And I wanted to talk really personally today about why I love this organization and the joy of generosity related to food and hunger issues. I'm in the Tibetan tradition. And as you know, the Tibetans, when they came to India, were in a refugee situation. And as we were reminded, the Buddha talked about the relationship of food to mental clarity. So one of the things that struck me in my early visits to India was the great sense of welcoming and attention to food when I went to the large Dharma events, sharing the refugee conditions, but being welcomed in a way that was particularly wonderful. And I'm thinking about the most recent assembly we had with something like 14,000 people. And our monastery had 3 separate areas for welcoming guests and feeding the guests. So the Ladakhis were greeted and fed their comfort food. The Westerners had a special area that had our sanitary conditions for eating and food that we would be comfortable with. And all the monastics had their food served in a way that they were comfortable with. And I've noticed every single time that we've had these big Dharma assemblies that there's been instruction and intention paid to food. And it is due to the connection between the food and mental clarity. So one of the great Rinpoches said, I want everyone here to feel at ease. And the best way to make people feel at ease and open to the teachings is to make sure they're comfortable with the food they have to eat, that they feel nourished. And any worry is put aside so that they can sit and listen to the Dharma teachings and take it all in. And I think about that in relation to what Buddhist Global Relief is doing as they feed children around the world, and particularly the programs for women and children. It's very hard for us as adults to remember what it was like when we didn't know how to read, how confusing that is, how unsettling it is, how difficult interacting with the world feels. And so to think, oh, I'm going to feed the children so that before they go into the classroom, their worries for that day are put aside. They feel nourished and loved, so that when they go into that classroom, their minds can have the mental clarity and they can make the leap from not understanding, from not being able to read, to all of a sudden the world opening up and being able to understand signs, understand what is going on in their world, to be able to make sense of the world through reading. I remember when I was in college, a friend of mine was in the education program, and she worked with a very brilliant educator who taught teachers how to teach reading. And he always began that by teaching the first class in gibberish. So people would remember what it was like not to be able to make sense of the world, not to be able to understand. And so to think of that feeling of being loved, being nourished, as the foundation so that we can learn is so important. It makes that intellectual leap possible. And then when I stop to consider the relatively small amount of money that Vajra Dakini is able to contribute each year to Buddhist Global Relief, I like to think about it in the same way I think about dedicating merit. That small drop that we contribute goes into the ocean of all the programs. And I think about being connected to all these different children and their lives and what they'll be able to do with now being able to read. So I think about families and the difference it makes if one child can read the directions on a medicine bottle, if one child can go with someone to the hospital and understand how to navigate the hospital system. And I think about the work that Buddhist Global Relief is doing with sustainable farming, how if some of the people in the family can read, they can understand the new information that's coming about their world and how they need to change the traditional ways they do farming. And then when I think of the people who are going to college, becoming teachers, becoming lawyers, it makes me feel interconnected in this web through all of these countries and all of these people in the most joyful way of seeing no space between us, that we are together moving into the world with compassion and love and rejoicing in the work of Buddhist Global Relief. So I thought we could start out just for a minute thinking of that drop in the ocean, going not only to all these families, but how these families' lives are changed, how each child's life changes with their children, with their community, and get a sense of the richness of what any of our donations mean to the whole world. And just take 1 second to allow our hearts to open to that, to rejoice in these hands of light going out and this opening of the eyes and potentials of all of these different communities, all of these different families, all of these different individuals. And just resting in appreciation and connection. So I bow to Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi and to all the wonderful folks at BGR. And I am just absolutely rejoicing in the opportunity to participate in this wonderful work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Khenpo Droma. We really appreciate your words of wisdom and kindness. Now we will be hearing from Myoke Kane Barrett, who is the current bishop of the Nichiren Shu Buddhist Order of North America. She's the first woman and first American to hold this position. She's also guiding teacher and priest of Myokenji Temple in Houston, the home to the Nichiren Buddhist Sangha of Texas. Myokenji Temple was established in 2005 and continues to share the Dharma with all beings. We're so happy to have you back with us today, Myoke Kane Barrett.
Good afternoon, and thank you. It's great to be here. It's one activity that happens yearly that we all look forward to participating in. I'd like to consider the term compassion. Most of the time people tend to think of it as a form of love. And I tend to look at compassion as love in action, or putting our common ideas of love into action. And when I broke down the definition of the word, there's a term in Japanese called jihi, which we interpret to mean mercy. But when you actually look at what the meaning is, the characters making up the word, the first is ji, which is maitri in Sanskrit, meaning loving kindness, benevolence, or friendliness. And the second he is karuna, which has been defined as compassion, but also to do, to make, or essentially to do something to alleviate suffering. And so all of the actions that we all take with respect to our participation in Buddhist global relief is part of a bigger picture, as Kenmo Drolma said just a minute ago, that our actions that we take to give happiness and relieve suffering is part of a greater whole. And part of our task as participants, as Buddhists, is to walk the path of alleviating suffering, not only for others, but for ourselves first, so that we are more capable of relieving the suffering of others. And sometimes I think of it as also for many folks who don't really understand the depth of being able to feel the suffering of others and awakening a great desire to eliminate it, is an action of faking it till you make it. Because the very act of relieving suffering of others and trying to bring them happiness really takes care of us in a way that maybe we're not thinking about. And there's been recent research to talk about the fact that when one acts on behalf of others, that all kinds of things happen within your own body that cause you to become happier, more relaxed, to connect, to be able to connect with people. So even if you're not geared that way, if you are engaged within a community that behaves that way, then what happens is that you learn to behave that way. And I see the action of us banding together to help others around the world is also teaching others how to do that. And especially those who are the recipients of our efforts, our collective gatherings, our collective actions, all designed to eliminate suffering in the entire universe of life. And with the full understanding that the entire universe of life is participating in this process of awakening. And that each of us has a role to play in whatever sphere of influence in which we live. And one of the greatest things that we're doing right now is this Buddhist global relief, that we're sharing compassion, we're sharing our ability to alleviate suffering with those who are suffering. So they in turn will also continue the cycle, to continue the process of alleviating suffering around the world. And it is such an act, I think, that brings us all great joy and a greater understanding of our connectedness. So we should never, ever think that what we're doing is not big enough. The words of the founder of our order were that it's more important for 1,000 people to take one step than for one person to take 1,000 steps. And we are taking one step, each of us, together. And we probably are making the effort of 1,000,000 steps rather than one person trying to do it all. And this is what's so beautiful about this type of gathering, because we are part of the community. We are spreading the message of refuge in a community that is ready and willing and capable of taking on the entire universe. And this is what we're doing. And I'm so grateful to be a part of it and to share it with people in my community so that they can share it with all others in their respective families and communities around the world. Let's keep this going and be totally appreciative for the tremendous friendships we are building with each other, even as we don't really know each other, that we're building together around the world. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Venerable Mioke, for those thoughtful and inspiring words. Really appreciate it. Now we will be hearing from Venerable Karma-Lekshi Tsomo. Karma-Lekshi is a professor of Buddhist studies at the University of San Diego, a founder and past president of Sakyadhita International Association of Buddhist Women, and the founder and director of Jamyang Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting education for girls and women in developing countries, and also one of BGR's partner organizations. She will be telling us about the work of Jamyang Foundation in Bangladesh. She will also have a PowerPoint presentation, so we look forward to hearing from you, Karma-Lekshi.
She has to unmute.
Please unmute yourself, Karma-Lekshi. Please unmute yourself. Thank you.
Yes, sorry. Aloha, everyone. I'm so happy to be part of this inspiring gathering. And thank you all for your wonderful words of encouragement and inspiration. We've been privileged to work with Buddhist Global Relief for the last 6-7 years. And I'd like to show you some photos of how the support of Buddhist Global Relief has helped to transform conditions for girls and nuns, both in India and in Bangladesh. Actually, Jamyang Foundation works both for the nuns and children in India, as well as in Bangladesh. So my last presentation was about the 12 projects that Jamyang Foundation does in India. And today I'd like to share our work in Bangladesh. So I'm going to share the screen and show you some images. Okay. Okay, so our mission, can you see the screen, the photos?
Yes, we can.
Oh, great. Okay, good.
Thank you.
So our work has been to help to redress the gender balance in Buddhist societies around the world, especially for women and girls in developing countries. And we hope to address the needs of the neediest in particular. So in Bangladesh, I started this work about 15 years ago, just sort of by accident, by meeting monks from Bangladesh in Bodh Gaya. And I'd like to introduce Bangladesh as a country. We don't think of Bangladesh when we think of Buddhist countries or Buddhist communities, but at one time, Bangladesh was completely Buddhist. And today, the population is less than 1%. I'll explain more. So they are Theravada Buddhists for the most part. And the Buddhists are very devout. This is one of the major temples in Dhaka. And you can see it's eclectic. In Bangladesh, they do, under Sheikh Hasina, have a policy of tolerance toward different religions. So the Buddhists here, the head monk of Bangladesh is shown with Sheikh Hasina at a ceremony, and maintaining these community relations is vital for the Buddhists as a small minority today in Bangladesh. Now you can see that Bangladesh is tucked into this corner And there are many different districts in Bangladesh. Most of the Buddhists live in Chittagong, but they're also in the major cities, Dhaka, Comilla. In fact, the country is covered with Buddhist sacred sites, most of which have not been excavated yet. Only a few of them have been excavated, but it's amazing. So we know that Bangladesh is a lowland country. It gets flooded and millions of people lose their homes every day due to the watershed in Tibet, the trees being cut down, and the whole ecosystem is completely messed up. So Bangladesh, all the Buddhists there follow the Theravada Buddhist tradition, though it's also the birthplace of Atisha, a great Mahayana master who is revered in the Tibetan tradition. But today, all the Buddhists follow the Theravada tradition, and we respect that. There are two different ethnicities of Buddhists in Bangladesh. The Plains Buddhists, most of them have the surname Barua, and then the Hilly Buddhists, they call them, they belong to many different tribes, such as, Chakma, Marma, Rakhine, and so forth. Some of the other minorities, ethnicities are also beginning to follow Buddhism. So they revere Shakyamuni Buddha, just like the rest of us. I started going there in about 1998, I suppose, and meeting the Buddhists of different backgrounds and noticing that there were no nuns in Bangladesh and wondering why this was, traveling around the country. And then seeing the gender imbalance here, I'm attending a gathering in Dhaka of the Bangladesh Buddhist Federation. And as you can see, I'm the only nun in the gathering, the only woman represented. And I think I'm probably asleep because it was really boring. In any case, the Hilly Buddhists, mostly. Sorry? Oh, okay. So the Hilly Buddhists, many of them speak languages related to Burmese. They're indigenous people who have been there since the beginning. And they have their own traditions. This is a funeral. You can see that they maintain their cultural traditions. And but poverty in Bangladesh is really a major issue. So I noticed that most of the women had no education, and we started these projects for education of Buddhist girls. Especially I've been working among the Marma people, but some of the girls also belong to different communities. So we started with bamboo houses, bamboo schoolrooms and so forth. And over the years, thanks to the help of Buddhist Global Relief and so many kind donors, we've been able to now move into more stable classrooms. And this just gives you an idea of some of the, the way that people live. They live very close to the earth. And just by providing meals and teachers, we've been able to help transform the perceptions of women and girls in these areas. Now you can see that the girls are really lovely, and of course they're vulnerable to sex trafficking. So by educating girls, educating young women, we do provide a kind of protection for them. Also by offering jobs to women teachers in these areas, we help to transform the perceptions of what women can do to transform the community. The outlay financially, it's not a huge amount of money compared to UN budgets and so forth, but the effects are amazing. And the children are so happy. We concentrated on girls because the boys can walk to different villages to attend schools in different towns where education is available, but girls can't do that because they're vulnerable to rape on the way. So we need to provide education in their villages and nearby. Now, many of these girls have gone on to graduate from high school, and some are getting gainful employment. And one has even become one of our scholarship students has even become an influencer on YouTube, providing free English classes to internationally. So when we first started this school in a small village outside of Manakchari, the children were so sad, but they were, because the living conditions are really harsh, but their parents were farsighted enough to send them to school. Today, we've got a proper building with 5 classrooms. And now, of course, the parents are very happy because the children get lunch, thanks to Buddhist Global Relief. Before, when they were coming to school, they were hungry. And as Kemodoma mentioned, when you're hungry, you can't concentrate on your lessons. So this has really changed things. And the girls are very delighted to have the opportunity to go to school and also to get free lunch. And so they really appreciate the programs, and their whole demeanor has completely transformed in the last 6 years because of getting better nutrition, and they can study much better. They're happy campers. They can, they're attentive. They can play. We've introduced, built sanitation facilities, which is rare in this area. Planted trees. They can eat the mangoes, and they get basic nutrition every day, and they can even play. Before they were not smiling, they were not playing, but now they are. They've got so much more energy. So that's very heartwarming. We have a pre-K program for the little ones. The parents, of course, are really happy to have a place where their children can land safely while they're working in the fields. The whole economy here is really minimal. And so this provides we even send the girls on the school excursions to broaden their outlook. And we've got a scholarship program that has provided this year 14 laptops, because the girls at Chittagong University who are doing Buddhist studies, there haven't been any classes the last 2 years. So with the laptops now, they're able to continue their education and move on to a professional life. And we're just so grateful for Buddhist Global Relief and all of that you've done to help. And we are really looking forward to this new classroom where the students can, now we'll have a 6th grade class. So every year we've been adding a new class. And this really helps because, as I mentioned, even for them from these villages where no girls had ever gotten any education before, now, hopefully, once they finish 6th class, they can test into the local schools. And we'd love to expand so that they can go on to junior high and high school and beyond. So thank you for giving me this opportunity to present our work. And I will now, stop sharing and hand the program back to the other presenters. Thank you so much for your kind listening.
Thank you so much, Carmela, for that really lovely presentation. It's just so heartwarming to see all those beautiful children. And we at BGR are just so happy that we can help support those girls and young women and make their lives better. It's just really wonderful. So today we are gathering to share the joy and blessings of all this generosity and to raise funds for our next year of work. You can donate to our work by clicking on the link we are going to show in the chat box, or just look for donate on www.buddhistglobalrelief.org. Our next presenter will be Reverend Cousin Gregory Snyder, who is a Dharma teacher, senior priest, and co-founder of the Brooklyn Zen Center and Ancestral Heart Residential Temple. He's also the senior director and assistant professor of Buddhist studies at Union Theological Seminary. And there he oversees the Master of Divinity degree program in Buddhism and interreligious engagement, as well as the Thich Nhat Hanh program for engaged Buddhism. Reverend Snyder, we're so happy to have you here today.
Thank you for having me. And it truly is a joy and honor. The people who have already presented are people I've studied and learned from and teach, and so I'm very humbled to be here with elders who have offered a great deal of wisdom and joy. I've been feeling into how to address this, and I think what strikes me is, well, first of all, I'm moved by everything that I've seen, and I'm moved by Bhikkhu Bodhi's insistence on keeping the issue of hunger at the center of our hearts. I am somebody who happened to grow up in a situation where there were times when my family was without homes and also was hungry. And I can say that to see, and rural poverty in the United States is something, or poverty in the United States in particular, is invisible to us in ways unless we go to particular places where we can see it. And sometimes the people living next door are hungry and feeling very alone, and no one even knows it's happening. And I think this is, so I was very, I felt a lot of joy when I saw the Detroit work. And so that's just my way of saying, for me, this is personal in my body, and I appreciate everything that's happening. And the one thing I think I want to talk a little bit about Dana, and I want to talk about one aspect of it, because there was this is a story from my own life. When I was in my 20s, I was working as a union organizer on the Mexico-Texas border, and particularly working with communities on the Mexico side who lived in what's called colonias, which is the word for the kind of very large shanty towns that grow up around factories right on the other side of the border from the United States. And in one of those situations, I remember walking up after, when we would go there, you know, these are people who make $3 a day working at the factory and don't have enough food. And yet when we would go there, they would make a meal that for us, that was 2 days worth of pay, 3 days worth of pay. And I remember going up on an overpass behind where we were visiting with people and looking out over, and as far as I could see, there were these houses built of corrugated plastic and cardboard and packed mud floors. And in the middle was a factory. And that factory had train tracks, and those train tracks went in one direction. They went to the United States. And in looking at that in a single snapshot was a relationship of the country that I was living in to many parts of the world. And so it strikes me when I'm particularly moved by the efforts of this organization, because I know that there is a deep commitment to the Dharma and the meaning of Dana and expanding who we are. And there is also a deep commitment that I know through Bhikkhu Bodhi's work and others of recognizing how this situation comes about, that it doesn't just appear in the world, that a lot of these situations aren't simply because there happens to be some people in the world who don't have and some who do, but that there are ways of life and relationships that set this up, that set this imbalance up. And so when I think of myself and I consider giving to these efforts, I almost feel embarrassed to say that I'm giving anything, because in many ways I'm returning what my way of life has taken, and that I am not in a position of giving. Actually, I'm in a position of returning, and that in some ways what I have almost should burn in my hands until I give it back. And so I was thinking of case 89, that in the book of Serenity, a case of koan stories, and there's a capping poem in what's often called a capping verse in the book of Serenity, in this particular case, that I just love dearly, that inspires me. And the last two lines are, "Been too long in the winter with the old dead tree, going to follow the spring wind into the scars of the burning. And they've been with the winter with the old dead tree is Chan Buddhist tongue-in-cheek way of talking about being in a monastery too long. And the kind of, there's the realization of emptiness and these things that can happen, but we can be with that old dead tree too long. And this was a monk who was leaving. The story is about a monk who was leaving the monastery to go back out into the world. And he's going to follow the spring wind into the scars of the burning. And the last line always strikes me because there's this buoyancy. This was a as we understand it, a liberated person. He had the buoyancy of the Dharma in his heart. He had that love, and he had that support of the tradition and of our ancestors and of this way of practice. And his choice at that moment was to go back into the world of karmic pain and to follow that joy into that world in order to be of service, to go back into the marketplace and be of service. And so there's something about the gift of our practice, the incredible gift of this practice, the incredible gift of this tradition that allows us freedom and buoyancy in a world of relative privilege, and relative privilege that is built on a system that takes from others, that it gives us the opportunity to open our, I mean, I really believe in some ways the Buddha just wanted us to become beings who could metabolize the suffering of the world, and to be that being, that recognizes that I am in a place that has a particular structural relationship to the world, and I am being cultivated as a being in that place that can metabolize that reality and give to the places from which my way of life has taken. And so I'm really grateful to Bhante and to this organization for recognizing the giving to those who require this, but also the recognition of how this came into place. And in some ways, it's our duty. This is a duty, and a joyful duty, a joyous duty, but a duty. And so I think that's all I have to say, and I deeply appreciate everything that everyone else has said. Thank you so much for offering to allow me to speak.
Reverend Snyder, thank you so much. You really touched our hearts. We appreciate it. We'll now have a musical interlude. Many of you know or know of Reverend Hung Shur, who's the managing director of Berkeley Buddhist Monastery and also a gifted musician. He has shared a song with us for this event, and we look forward to hearing it. So, Kim, will you share that song with us now?
Sorry, Carla.
No problem. I know you have to do things in a certain order to make it sound right. That's cool.
Hi friends, this is Reverend Hung Shur coming to you from the Gold Coast of Queensland, expressing my appreciation.
Kim, we seem to have lost you.
Hi friends, this is Reverend Hung Shur coming to you from the Gold Coast of Queensland, expressing my appreciation for all the staff and the volunteers of Buddhist Global Relief, for which I am proud to serve as an advisor. And I want to offer today two songs. One is Janice Ian's Better Times Will Come, and encourage everybody to visit the bettertimeswillcome.com website, where Janice is offering the song and asking you to make your own version. I will follow that with Medicine Buddha's Mantra, which is a power tool that Buddhists have to offer in this time of the pandemic. This is truly a method that we have to purify the air, starting with our hearts, purifying our hearts and then purifying the world. Better times will come, better times will come. When this world learns to live as one, oh, better times will come. Though we greet each dawn without fear, knowing loved ones soon will be near. When the winds of war cannot blow anymore, oh, better times will come. Better times will come, better times will come. When this world learns to live as one, oh, better times will come. Though we greet each day as our last, knowing someday soon this will pass, we will dance, we will sing in that never-ending spring. Oh, better times will come. Better times will come, better times will come. When this world learns to live as one, oh, better times will come. Your turn. Better times will come, better times will come. When this world learns to live as one, oh, better times will come. Oh, better times will come. Bhagavate Vaisajya Guru Vaidurya Prabharajaya Tathagataya Arahate Samyak Sambuddhaya Tadyata Om Vaisaje Vaisaja Sambhugate Swaha Om Namo Bhagavate Vaisajya Guru Vaidurya Prabharajaya Tathagataya Arahate Samyak Sambuddhaya Tadyata Om Vaisaje Vaisaja Sambhugate Swaha Om Namo Bhagavate Vaisajya Guru Vaidurya Prabharajaya Tathagataya Arahate Samyak Sambuddhaya Tadyata Om Vaisaje Vaisaja Vaisaja Sambhugate Kate Swaha.
That was really great. I'm so happy to hear those songs. Music is a wonderful way to the heart. So next, we will be hearing from Patty Price, who is a member of BGR's board. But before joining our board, she had a nonprofit career, which included several years with international human development organizations. Her years assisting 2 quasi-governmental development agencies in Kingston, Jamaica, and later 11 years with CARE International, traveling throughout Africa, the Caribbean, and South America, led to her advocacy for access to education, healthcare, and skills development for women and girls. She had the opportunity to go to Africa recently and see one of our projects with Helen Keller International. And we are so happy to see what she found and see her up close vision of the work in Cote d'Ivoire.
Thanks, Carla. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Terrific. Kim is going to run the slideshow that I put together. It wasn't exactly recently. It's been a few years. None of us has been doing much traveling recently, but I'd like to take you to the nation of Cote d'Ivoire, formerly known as the Ivory Coast. But when they became independent, they wanted to go back to being known as Cote d'Ivoire. It is still primarily a French-speaking nation, despite that they're no longer under the realm of the French. Kim, can you bring the
Yes, but
program
yes,
up?
Patty. Yeah.
Thank you, dear. Cote d'Ivoire, like many African nations, has some very, very wealthy people, and while the majority are extremely poor. So Helen Keller International has been working there for quite a number of years. They presented to Buddhist Global Relief a proposal in 2016 that we agreed, or in late 2015, that we agreed to help them with a program. They want to go into villages throughout the northern Corhogo region to address serious malnutrition. Here's a little map, Corhogo region, far north. This is this section that was under civil war about 10 years ago. Extreme poverty, extreme malnutrition. So Helen Keller wants to do nutrition projects, multi-years, eventually reaching 60,000 people in 60 villages. So they were looking for sponsors to take on a village for 3 years while they could present the program. And we agreed. With the successful completion of the first village that we funded, they came back and asked whether we would like to sponsor another village in Corhogo district, and we agreed to do that with Helen Keller. And as was mentioned, I had the honor of going to visit that village and was present there for the day with the launch of our funded maternal child health and nutrition project. You can see some figures here for the 60,000 future total beneficiaries. The number of children under 5, 22,000, 37,000 women and girls older than 5, 2,000 boys 5 to 18, and only 500 men. And it's not because we're discriminating. However, once boys reach age 18, they leave the villages and go out seeking work elsewhere. So the villages that we're supporting are largely female dominated villages. Here's a picture from one of the participants, Dan Fielder, who was our contact with Helen Keller International, and I visited both of the communities, the one that we were about to launch and one that we had sponsored earlier on, and there was quite a difference. Kim, next picture, please. In the village Neofine that we are supporting now, you can see this nutrition chart or malnutrition chart. The upper chart is where they are right now. As you can see, 50% of that community's population is malnourished. That's the red. The orange is, or that red is severely malnourished. The orange is serious, and the yellow is moderate, and the green is at risk of malnutrition. So you can see down at the lower right by my fingers that only a small percent of the population is considered healthy. The chart right below that one, which only has green, light blue, and dark blue, that's the goal. So that only perhaps 25% of a community is at risk of malnutrition, whereas the majority will be healthy and some following into that moderate health. So we're dealing with a population significantly malnourished. These are some of the 100 or more new mothers and new and expecting mothers who came for the launch of the nutrition program. I want to introduce you to the woman who was the most influential person I met there, Salimata Coulibaly. She is the nutrition expert that Helen Keller has hired to present the program, introduce the program to each and every one of the villages. The beauty of Madame Coulibaly is that she speaks about 8 of the various native tribal languages from that region. She is also fluent in, her primary language is French, but she speaks several other languages as well. And un petit peu of English. We got along well. For 25 years, she was the head of the Red Cross in Côte d'Ivoire before creating the nutrition program. So she is doing the presentation. I have an arrow in this picture. Part of the program is that the government of Côte d'Ivoire's health ministry is underwriting the cost of having a nurse or midwife in residence in each of the communities participating in the program, so that there is a trained health professional on site in each of these communities. There's tremendous value in that. We're talking about hygiene being very important with respect to healthy meal preparation. Next slide, please. Several doctors associated with the Ministry of Health accompanied us that day. They took the time to do the arm measuring, which is a way of determining the severity of malnourishment. And every infant and child under 5 in the community who attended that day was measured so that they would be able to know exactly what needs to be done for the various levels of malnutrition in both the mothers and their children, and have a baseline for monitoring progress. Next. This is the maternity / hospital room in the community. It's got 3 metal beds. Only 2 of them had mattresses on them. And the doctor who assists the midwife and who visits all of the villages gave us a short list of things that are very, very, what we would think of standard equipment in a maternity ward that they were lacking. And Buddhist Global Relief determined that in addition to our grant for the community for 3 years, we were also going to fulfill their wishes on this list, including a stethoscope. So hundreds of babies are born in that space every year. So over half of the children in Neofine were moderately to severely malnourished, and some of them had other nutrition-related maladies, stunting being one of them. So the demonstrations talk about how to the community, a community-based meal every day of a nutrient-fortified porridge. Madame Coulibaly took the lead women volunteers in the community on a walk around the town, as she does in each community, to identify plants and leaves that are growing in the wild, trees and ground plants, where the leaves have some nutritional value, are not poisonous, and can be shredded and boiled and add nutrition to the porridge. Because providing basic porridge is one thing, but making sure that there's additional nutrients to improve health more rapidly is critical. And in communities where there is no monetary basis, no stores, and frequently lacking a functioning community garden for a variety of reasons, having Madame Coulibaly help to educate the women about added nutrients is really, really useful. Next slide. Everybody got a meal that day in each of the communities where this is going on. The first few times the meal is developed by Madam Coulibaly and the volunteers, and then the volunteers take over leading this on a daily basis. You can see how small and frail. So one of the problems with not having a community garden or having malnutrition in general is lack of water. In this community of roughly 1,000 people, this is the one and only water source. And at the time I was there, the water table was extremely low. So these girls have to lower this rope, which was easily 25 or more feet long. And one at a time, they lower the rope down until they can get a bucket, a standard bucket full of water, and pulling it back up, fill their basins. And when one girl is done filling the basin, it goes on her head and she walks back to her home or section of the community. And girls aged roughly 10 to 16 or so, this is how they spend their day. Very, very unhealthy. It can stunt their growth to be carrying heavy water, but the beauty is they actually have water right in the community, which is not in every community. The Helen Keller project aims to make sure that there is a water source within each community where the program is being carried out. This was a village that was started a couple of years ago, and they did not have a natural well or water source in the community. So a borehole where literally we came in with equipment, or they came in with equipment and had to drill. But they've got the beauty of this crank that can lower the buckets down and bring them back up again, and can put a lid over the top of that well so that they're preserving the health of the water in there. I've listed here a few of the other issues with not having water accessible on site, including children not being allowed to go to school because they're needed to go and cart water. The weight of carrying buckets of water has been proven to stunt children's growth. And as referenced by one of our other presenters, when girls have to travel distances from their village, they're at great risk of attack. And so young girls who have to leave their villages to get water are frequently sent in groups in order to avoid being attacked. These little boys and their father showed up quite late in the program that day. And there was some an upsurge in conversation among the women at the program. And one of them translated that the gentleman who was carrying the small child and holding the hand of the other who was crying was their father. He was an elderly man. He had married, lost his first wife, married a younger woman, and that she was home dying of AIDS. And that in fact, the boys are twins. And when you look at this picture, you can understand how shocked I was to learn that. The doctors from the Ministry of Health immediately took the father and the boys into the building to get their story, to learn more about how seriously ill and malnourished the boys were, and convinced the father to allow them to take Z, the younger child, to the hospital the following day to be enrolled in a nutrition program. Ever since returning from Cote d'Ivoire, these two boys, Z and Zahana, have been on my mind. I could tell the father was not healthy. It was clear that their mother was on her deathbed. And I didn't know what I've always wondered what happened to them. So about 4 months ago, I asked Helen Keller International if they could reach out to their team in the Ivory Coast and let me know what happened to the boys. Well, they're no longer in a Helen Keller sponsored community. Their mother did pass away, and then their father passed last year. They're now living with an uncle, pictured here, who is a farmer in central Ivory Coast, who has 3 children of his own. And the good news is that region where they are has a nutrition assistance program for families with children who are malnourished or under age 5. So the family is receiving some supplemental nutrition, which is helpful since they've taken in these 2 boys. but you can see that they are clearly looking healthier than they did at the time that I first met them. Z will be stunted for life. There's no doubt about that, but they are eligible to go to school. However, COVID has shut the schools down. So it was the hope of the uncle that they and his children would be going to school very soon. So that was sort of the good news story. And what was most impressive to me is that the Helen Keller team in Corhogo tracked down where the boys were hours away and went there to take pictures for us so that we would know that they are well and that our concern over their lives is I don't have to be so concerned about that anymore. But they're just representative of thousands and thousands of children who lose their parents due to illness and malnutrition and other issues in the developing world. This is the team. The gentleman in the tan slacks and the gray shirt in the center is the country director for Helen Keller International. He is a native of Cote d'Ivoire. He had been working for them in several other African nations and had just become the director for Cote d'Ivoire, his native country, about 2 months before I got there. And I'm on the left with some of the team, Madam Koulibaly, and Dan Fiedler from Helen Keller is on the right next to some of the other team. I want to thank all of you who contribute to Buddhist Global Relief and allow us to extend our gifts and grants to fight hunger throughout the world. As Buddha said, hunger is the worst kind of illness. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you, Patty.
Well, Patty, thank you so much for sharing all those really fantastic, the pictures and the story. It's just really so meaningful. And I'm just so thankful that BGR, with the help of our donors, is able to share a little bit and help some of these people.
Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Reverend June Park, who is a Kyomunim, literally one devoted to teaching Buddha Dharma in the Won Buddhist tradition. Reverend Park started her monastic training in 1998. She graduated from the Department of Won Buddhism, Won Kwang University, Iksan, Korea, and earned an MA in Won Buddhist Studies from the Won Institute of Graduate Studies, Glenside, Pennsylvania. She received full ordination in 2007, and since 2008 has served as a minister of the Manhattan Won Buddhist Temple and a representative of Won Buddhism at the United Nations. She's the Buddhist Religious Life Advisor at Columbia University and New York University. Reverend Do-Yoon is also actively engaged in interfaith dialogue and cooperation to promote mutual understanding and respect among different religions. And we thank her for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my reflections along with respectful Dharma teachers and activists. And I'm especially grateful and honored to receive an invitation from Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi. After I moved to the States from Korea, I developed more interest in the Pali Canon. And of course, Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi's translations and commentaries guided me to a deeper understanding of the Buddha Dharma. So for this reason, I'm forever indebted to his Dharma work. In fact, and it's almost like idol for me. And think about how cool it is to get invited by your idol. So I accepted this invitation with both deep respect and joy. But at the same time, I'm aware that I'm not here personally. I mean that today I'm speaking to you on behalf of the Buddhist Council of New York, which was founded in 1985 to foster dialogue and cooperation within the Buddhist community in the New York City area. And we have always been so proud of the BGR and happy to support its work. And it's not just because we like the people leading this organization, but also because we share the ultimate vow and aspiration of helping all sentient beings. So we're here today, especially focusing on this compassion in action. And as we all know, compassion is about wishing others to be free from suffering. And it refers to a sense of solidarity with others and with all life around us. And if we look deeply, we can see that compassion is an expression of the enlightened mind. And yet it's also a pathway to an enlightened mind. And indeed, compassion and enlightened mind are not two. They cannot be separated, like the moon and the light shining from the moon. And I don't think that this is all new to you. I mean, that you all know that compassion is good and important for individuals and communities' well-being. Does that mean you live with compassion? And actually, this is the question I ask myself. My teacher often said, when hungry, you need to eat. Continuing to look at the menu doesn't make you full. She was warning me not to confuse knowing for doing. And this is something I need to constantly remind of myself, even today. And reading or listening to Dharma talks, it's not enough. Developing compassion only in our mind are not enough. And we see that compassion must be manifested through our actions that bring real benefits to the lives of others and ourselves. And again, I'm deeply inspired and thankful to all opportunities presented here for us to join the relief work to release sufferings of boys and girls and sisters and brothers. And here I'd like to share my personal struggling when it comes to the compassion practice. For a while, I thought I was making decent progress in compassion practice by giving what I can offer. But then I realized that I was keeping myself in a comfort zone with my favorite people, thinking that my love and compassion has grown stronger. But what about those I find difficult and even hateful? And the Sotaesan once said, who wouldn't love a good person? To love a hateful person is a practice of what we call great loving kindness and great compassion. So I had to kind of remind myself that, my practice has to take one step further to cultivate compassion, not only for our loved ones, but also for those we find difficult. And I know it's always easier said than done, and this is why it's called practice. And one thing I find very helpful to remember in cultivating compassion, especially towards difficult people, is that unskillful and harmful behaviors comes from a place of suffering and ignorance. If we try hard to look deeply into people who carry destructive actions, we can see their inner suffering. And for me, this simple recognition of where our behaviors originate from helps us to open our hearts and embrace difficult people. And embracing difficult people doesn't always mean that we agree with their actions, but rather it means that we create inner space to wish and offer them happiness and wisdom, which will ultimately bring greater peace to all of us. So we see that every human being has the same potential for compassion. And the question is whether we take care of that potential and implement it in our daily lives or not. Again, today, thank you for guiding us with the various projects we can participate in this compassionate action. And also, I hope we continue to make this conscious effort to expand the scope of our compassion from our individual, immediate family and friends to our community, nation, and to the whole world. And I believe we can start this journey, this practice here and now. And again, thank you all for offering all your great programs there so that we can actually do this, make this compassion in our action part. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Reverend Park, for your wisdom and for the challenge you've given us. I really appreciate that. Tough as it is, it's good to hear. Thank you. Many of you know of our support for Shraddha charity organization in Sri Lanka. Now we're going to see a brief video that they sent us showing the distribution of food during the pandemic that they have been doing. I know that you will appreciate seeing this as well. Kim will be sharing this video with us. Kim, we aren't seeing your screen yet. Okay, it looks like you've started screen sharing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Another important step was taken recently to give compassionate assistance to pregnant mothers. With primary financial assistance from Buddhist Global Relief in the United States, along with Sonduru Sihinaya Urumaya, another charity program has been implemented by Shraddha Charity Organization to improve nutrition of pregnant mothers on the island. A nutrition care package is given monthly for pregnant mothers and the unborn children. The charitable program was recently conducted in the Serrawilla area to provide support to expectant mothers and those with newborn children. Funds from Buddhist Global Relief regularly provide nutritional support to 15 mothers. In addition, more than 20,000 rupees is allocated to provide mothers with essential maternity items for newborns.
I'm happy raising my 4 children, but 3 weren't so lucky to get a ride in a stroller. I wasn't able to buy one. I didn't have enough money. I really wanted to get one for my kids, but with things as they are and my husband's job, there was just no way. I'm really happy that Buddhist Global Relief gave this. They should receive more and more help. Keep doing more to give things to poor people like us.
To be honest, this is like a dream for me. I would never have been able to afford these things, and to live like this, it's so difficult. I have 4 children, and I have to raise these 4 children through righteous means. Honestly, to have received food and supplies like this over the last year, it has been a huge help. If we had tried to buy these things ourselves, we would have struggled so much. To the Buddhist Global Relief Organization, who have donated these food supplies to us, they have done a huge service for me, and may they receive more and more appreciation for their efforts.
We live off a 3-wheel taxi driver's salary. Now, because everything is expensive, the goods we have received over these past months, it's really not possible to say how valuable they have been for us to keep surviving during this difficult time. Every month we receive food aid worth 6,000 rupees. The children and ourselves eat the dry rations. I'm happy, you know. The Venerable Monk of Seruvilla Monastery, Shraddha Charity Organization, and Buddhist Relief, may all of them have the strength and courage to do more and more things like this. The heartfelt service they're doing is really praiseworthy.
Actually, along with my loan, my monthly income is 7,000 rupees. We have to live on 7,000 rupees. With 4 children, the food aid worth 6,000 rupees is really valuable, because otherwise we have to find the money somehow. Much merit to Buddhist Global Relief for this tremendous help that they are giving us. I hope that they have the strength and courage to do more and more things like this.
Isn't it great to see how those simple food packages and a few household goods are making such a difference in the lives of these people in Sri Lanka? Our next speaker will be Roshi John Hogetsu Hoberes, who is the abbot of Heart Circle Sangha in Ridgewood, New Jersey. She has been an advisor to Buddhist Global Relief since its inception, and has recently relocated to Tiburon, California, from where she plans to continue to support BGR. And she also works as a psychotherapist in private practice. Thank you, Reverend Hubbard.
Thank you, Carla. Am I unmuted?
Yeah, we can hear you. Thank you.
So I first met Bhante when I was having an attack of compassion. It was following the flood, the tsunami of 2004, and much of Sri Lanka had been devastated. They lost it's a small island with a small population. They had lost 30,000 people, and everybody I met had lost somebody. So I was looking for a way to go to Sri Lanka to help. I understood from various sources that there wasn't a need for medical services, but there was a terrible need for psychotherapy for the villagers and the people of Sri Lanka to process their terrible losses. And I thought I had a solution. So I approached Bhante because I had heard he was a monk that had spent 35 years in Sri Lanka, and I thought he might be able to help me. So we had several conversations, and I had a really nice connection. I liked him a lot. And at some point, I realized he was the Bhikkhu Bodhi scholar whose books filled much of my bookshelves. And I hadn't made that connection at all. And I remember saying to him, "You're that Bhikkhu Bodhi?" So after many struggles, I did finally find a way to get to Sri Lanka. I actually had some connections there myself that I hadn't thought through at the time I approached Bhante. And it was kind of compulsive. I could not let this go. I really had to move forward on it. It was like nothing I had experienced before. It was like I was compelled to get to Sri Lanka to offer what I could, which was not that much, but it was true. There was not much knowledge of psychotherapy and how to help people process their loss. And so I did put together a project. I don't really want to spend much time on that project, but I did put together a project which was, it lasted for 7 years in one form or another. And I was very grateful for having met Bhante at that point. We continued to connect, and he did ask me at one point to become an advisor. And I'm very proud to have been an advisor from the very beginning and to have been involved even as peripherally as I was in BGR and its wonderful work. I also want to stop for a moment and congratulate Kim Behan and Bhante on the award they've recently received, recognizing the hard work that's gone into building this organization. It's really a privilege to be part of it, even a small part. Bhante asked me to say a few words about compassion in action. And I started thinking about it and realized that action is an intrinsic part of the experience of compassion. It's what we do naturally when we put our small self aside and connect to the world, the big sky mind, the universe. It just arises, and we have to attend to what's right in front of us. There's a Zen koan that captures this called The Hands and Eyes of the Bodhisattva of Great Compassion. The Bodhisattva of Compassion, or Avalokiteshvara, or Kuan Yin, was awakened by hearing the cries of the world. And she grew 1,000 hands and eyes to help relieve the suffering of the world. And BGR is one extension of those hands and eyes. And really all of us here are extensions of her hands and eyes. Some of us give money, some of us volunteer our time, some of us give talks, some of us do things out of compassion for those many folks who are poor, hungry, and disempowered, as we've seen many examples in these presentations, these very moving presentations today. Like many of you, I suspect, I wish I could do more. Here's the koan. Yun Yen asked Tao Wu, what does the Bodhisattva of great compassion use so many hands and eyes for? Wu said, it's like someone reaching back in the middle of the night, looking for a pillow and adjusting it. Yen said, I understand. Wu said, how do you understand it? Yen said, all over the body are hands and eyes. Wu said, you have quite a bit there, but you've only got 80% of it. Yen said, well, what do you say, elder brother? Wu said, throughout the body are hands and eyes. So reaching back to adjust a pillow in the middle of the night is a very natural, almost unconscious gesture. You just do what needs to be done. You feel a little uncomfortable and you move to adjust the pillow to resolve that discomfort. Compassion generates the same natural response. The suffering of others makes us uncomfortable. And we need to respond. It's kind of imperative. Joan Halifax differentiates empathy and compassion. Compassion is feeling the pain and acting to relieve it. Empathy is feeling the pain of the person suffering. With compassion, the action is embedded in the compassion. Halifax says, this is just a lovely quote about Avalokiteshvara, that she responds with a boundless heart. She does not sink like a heavy stone in the waters of suffering, but is broken open like a geode to the rare space within, glittering with light for those who are struggling in darkness. She further says that compassion calls forth our best human capacities: attentional balance and caring, unselfish, intentioned insight, and ethical action in a way that no other response does. And we've seen this over and over again today in the videos and the presentations that you've shown us with what BGR does with these projects that keep growing and manifest compassion all over the world. It's always so moving to me to really hear and see what you're doing. Only 14 years ago, BGR was just an idea. Bhante wrote a paper which he published in Lion's Roar saying that it wasn't enough for Buddhists to just sit, but they have to actually reach out from compassion and make the world a better place. Almost daily, I am awed, this is Bhante's words, almost daily, I am awed by the enormity of the suffering that assails human beings on every continent, and even more by the hard truth that so much of this suffering springs not from the vicissitudes of impersonal nature, but from the fires of greed, hatred, and delusion raging in the human heart. This was an important article, as many of Bhante's articles are, that inspired his students and those of us who weren't his students to come together to support an organization to tackle the important problems like hunger and poverty and the needs of women, the empowerment of women. Martin Luther King, in his 1967 speech, Beyond Vietnam, said, "True compassion is more than flinging a coin to a beggar, but comes to see that an edifice which produces beggars needs restructuring." There's so much restructuring to be done. Bhante, in another article in Lion's Roar, said, as heirs to the Buddha's teachings, we are called with compelling urgency to the task of envisaging the new structures needed to protect human life on Earth. We have to create communities, both locally and globally, that express wisdom, care, and compassion. The word Dharma means not just Buddhism, but the whole body of principles that support human beings and draw out our best potentials. To be itself, karuna, or compassion, must eventuate in karana, doing. Our work may begin with transforming our own minds and values, but it cannot stop there. We have to go further and further and manifest those in action, in deeds that will build a safer, kinder, and more just world. And again, I congratulate BGR in doing just that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Reverend Joan. Thank you. Much appreciated, and another great challenge to us. Yeah, that Bhikkhu Bodhi. That's the Bhikkhu Bodhi that we're going to be hearing from. I also have a shelf full of his books, his translations and original work. We have all benefited from his vision and his energy. Now we will hear from renowned scholar and philanthropist, the Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi. We can't hear you very well. We just hear you very faintly.
Yeah, I know why. I always put the microphone up for my comfort. Yeah, I wanted to begin by again thanking all of the speakers who have given such beautiful, wonderful, eloquent, deeply moving and comprehensive talks that I'm left almost with nothing to say on my own. But maybe a few things to dwell on. One is the way Buddhist Global Relief started almost by a very strange constellation of accidents that brought it into being. Like I wrote that essay for, originally it was in the Buddha Dharma magazine, maybe it was later reprinted in Lion's Roar back in, I think it was published first in 2007. Never had the intention of founding an organization, but the magazine was published. I never told anybody else that I had this essay in the magazine, but a number of my friends and students read the magazine, started to talk first amongst themselves, then they brought me into the conversation, felt that they had to do something to take up the challenge presented in the essay, in the passage that Kim had quoted earlier, that the task facing Buddhism in the 21st century is to serve as a voice of conscience for those who cannot speak for themselves. And so we started some initial rounds of discussions. Originally, we were going to try to tackle all of the problems of the world, from climate change, war, natural disasters, and realized it's a little bit too big for us, especially when we had about 4 people and no money on our hands. And so we decided to narrow the focus down to the problem of hunger and malnutrition. Then, out of nowhere, Kim Behan had attended one of our summer camps at Bodhi Monastery, where I was living early in 2002 to 2007. So she attended in 2006. It was just like about 5 days. Then for 2 years, I didn't hear from her again. Then she wrote to me just at the time when we were going to have our first meeting, just about a month before, 2 months before, she wrote to me saying that she had attended my classes that during that summer camp. She was coming to the East Coast and was wondering if she could meet me. And she told me that she was interested in social engagement. And so I told her we were having this formative meeting for a Buddhist relief organization. And she just happened to be in the East Coast just at the time when we had that initial meeting. And so she could join us, and eventually went on to become our outstanding executive director. Then after that first meeting, but before the second meeting, Patty Price, who gave the presentation of the visit to Côte d'Ivoire, she had been working for CARE, and somehow I had made a donation to CARE through the Bodhi Monastery when I was living there. And she said that she would be coming to this area and wanted to visit me. So she visited me, and then she told me that she would be retiring from CARE. And I told her, we're forming a relief organization. We're having our second meeting in June. Why don't you join us and just attend the meeting? She attended the meeting, liked it, and she became a board member, and then she became the chair of the projects committee. So in this way, and then virtually everybody that's involved with Buddhist Global Relief somehow just came in, sometimes finding out about it through the internet, sometimes learning by word of mouth. And in that way, we've been able to expand the range of our staff and our board. Then how did we expand the range of our projects? That was interesting. First, we decided that that the special mission should be to address the problem of chronic hunger and malnutrition. And we thought, how do we do that? By providing food aid to those who are hungry. But then after the initial projects, I was reading some information on the website about global hunger, an article about global hunger on the website. And the article said that one of the deep underlying roots of hunger and malnutrition is the subordinate status of girls and women in many traditional cultures. And that made me think, well, if we're going to combat hunger and malnutrition, we can't just go on giving food to people who are hungry, but we have to look at the roots of it. And that's quite in accord with the way the Buddha's teaching works. If you're going to relieve suffering, you don't put a Band-Aid on the wound, but you have to look out and probe down, find, why do you have this wound? Why are you getting these sores on the body? And so we look down and we see girls are not getting an education. Women are disrespected in their communities, don't play a significant role. So how are we going to ameliorate this problem? By giving girls the chance to go to school. When girls go to school, then they become, not only do they have some degree, but their voices are respected. They will marry later. They'll have fewer children. They'll have more control over the affairs in the household. They'll have a better understanding of nutrition and know how to look after their children, their families. When women have the chance to learn some vocation, to get some vocational training, especially a lot of women now become widows, particularly in countries which have been afflicted with poverty, with AIDS, and so forth, or else their husband is not able to earn enough to support the family. When women start some vocational project, whatever wealth they earn, they use much more wisely for the sake of their families than the men. When the men earn money, I'm sorry to say, too much of it goes on gambling, drink, or frivolous entertainment. When women earn money, they use almost all of it, not even for themselves, but for the family. And so we expanded the range of the projects, girls' education, women's livelihood. And then recently I learned something else that's astonishing. You know, the big challenge that the human community, in fact, the bio community on this planet faces is escalating climate change. So what are we going to address climate change? Usually we think we have to change from gas-powered automobiles to electric vehicles, stop generating electricity by burning coal and gas, and use solar panels. And of course, those are very important measures, but another very major way to address climate change is through girls' education. I found this out just maybe initially about 2 years ago. There's a person, Paul Hawken, who had a project called Operation Drawdown for drawing carbon. These are all of the measures he recommended, about 100 measures for drawing carbon, for reducing carbon emissions and drawing carbon down from the atmosphere. So 100 measures in Operation Drawdown. And of those 100 measures, number 6 was girls' education. Okay, then when it comes to fighting climate change, another important, almost compelling need is to change over from what is called the industrial model of agriculture, which uses heavy technology, which is highly dependent on fossil fuels, highly dependent on chemical inputs. Sometimes it can bring over a period of several years great increases in crop yields, great harvests, but the long-term consequence, the long-term impact is negative one. It depletes the soil of its of the minerals. It causes excess buildup of chemicals in the soil, which then moves out into the water, and then it flows from the water into the rivers, lakes, and the oceans, causing nitrogen and phosphorus pollution. So industrial agriculture is responsible for something like 32% of carbon emissions. And then industrial agriculture grows a lot of crops to feed animals, to use the animals for food, cattle and pigs, and so forth. So the way to address climate change, while at the same time feeding people and sustaining the health and vitality of the natural environment, is by shifting from this industrial, chemical intensive model of agriculture to what is called agroecology. That is small scale agricultural projects which harmonize with the natural environment, which use natural resources in a wise and restrained way, and ensure that the natural cycles of give and take between agriculture and the surrounding environment is sustained rather than damaged. So in this way, our range of projects expanded from the original focus on direct food aid to girls' education, women's livelihood, and agroecological projects, small-scale agricultural products in Southeast Asia, Africa, Latin America, and even here in the United States, where we're sponsoring in Detroit, this Keep Growing Detroit, which uses plots of land. Actually, these are plots that had previously been occupied by buildings. The buildings have been destroyed, removed, nothing but vacant lots there. Now the communities are turning them into community gardens, which can grow crops to support those communities. So I think it's really a remarkable range of projects for BGR, which we never started with the idea, a clear idea of how to address hunger, except through direct food aid. But now we're addressing the roots of global hunger and doing it in ways which are widespread, comprehensive, and I believe very effective. And so I want to thank everybody in every way that's contributed to the growth success of BGR, to our staff members led by Kim and Carla, who's our dedicated assistant, our other board members, and the other staff members, the whole team of people that help with BGR work, and our advisors, and also the supporting organizations. And in addition to the ones that Carla mentioned, I should also mention two other organizations that promoted the word of Buddhist Global Relief, maybe three, I think. One is the Buddhist Council of Greater St. Louis, and it's MABA, the Mid-American Buddhist Association, which has often been supporting BGR walks in St. Louis. Another is the Buddhist Action Coalition of New York City, of which I'm also a member, and the Zen Buddhist Center, the Houston Zen Center, led by Galen Godwin, who had written to me earlier. She said that she was trying to get on, but she didn't have the link. I sent it to her, but I'm not sure whether she was able to join or not. So those are some other contributing organizations. Okay, to wrap up, I think maybe, let me just look at the schedule. Yeah, I think Carla had one little reminder, and then.
We're just about at the end now, Bhante.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how much it means to me to be able to have the opportunity to listen to you as you, with your wisdom, distill all the things that you learn and help us see them through the eyes of the Buddha. That's just what you do for me. So thank you so much. We are putting up another link for you to donate. If you have the opportunity to donate, please donate at www.buddhistglobalrelief.org. Now, Monty is going to lead us in a loving kindness meditation and sharing of the merits to end the day.
Okay. Okay, so let us, I do this every week, so let us just sit in a comfortable position. And we close the eyes and let the mind spread out over the earth. And let us then focus in on some of the project overviews that we saw today and just bring those people into our hearts. First, we can take some of the girls in the Visakha school in Bangladesh. This is a school supported by the Jamyang Foundation. Those poor girls from very, very poor communities going to school, struggling to study, minds not able to focus well because of hunger. And now they learn that a project has been started to provide them with school lunches every day, quite a healthy, substantial meal. And now feel their joy, not only because they have delicious food, but now they have energy, the mind's clearer, sharper, more alert, and they're able to plunge themselves into their studies with energy and joy. And so let's rejoice in the joy of those girl students. And often I like to think that all of these children, no matter where they are, could have been our own sons, our own daughters. It's just by the fluke of chance that they are not our sons and daughters. So feel the joy that you would feel if your own daughter going to school was getting a wholesome, substantial midday meal. Okay, then move the mind now to Côte d'Ivoire and bring to mind maybe that photo that Patty had showed of the mothers with their young children, or in some cases, expectant mothers. Waiting to receive, to be enrolled in a program that would provide them with nutritional assistance. And again, you might think that you are that mother and those are your children. Or you are the father, and those are your children. And again, rejoice in the knowledge. You could see the way from the color chart that you showed, the way families move from the malnutrition range of the spectrum to the well-nourished side of the spectrum. And rejoice in the transformation that this project is making in their lives. Okay, then move the mind to Sri Lanka. And you could bring to mind some of the images from the little video that we saw of those families, some with 4 children, including newborn baby, struggling just to make ends meet. And now you learn that through the partnership of BGR with Shraddha Charity Organization, that you'll be provided with, I think, a monthly parcel of dried food goods. And then think lastly of this whole planet Earth, where we have close to 900 million people facing food insecurity every day. Millions dying from hunger, from illnesses caused by malnutrition. And let our hearts be stirred by the desire, the wish to reach out and help. But we can't rescue everybody. But even if through our concerted efforts, we can pull a few thousand people from that ocean of desperation and bring them onto the dry land of security, well-being, and hope, that should be a cause for joy. Okay, I'm going to recite a verse for sharing of the merits. Akasata cha bhumata devanaga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu sasanang. Akasata cha bhumata devanaga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu desanang. Akasata cha bhumata devanaga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu mang parang. Dukkha patajani dukkha, baya patajani baya, soka patajani soka, hantu sabepi panino. May those in suffering be free from suffering. May those in fear be free from fear. May those in sorrow be free from sorrow. May all living beings also be thus. We go sadhu, sadhu,
Sadhu,
sadhu.
sadhu,
Okay.
sadhu.
Okay, and that's it. And again, thank you to everybody who's joined us.
Thank you,
Bante.